Total Screen proudly presents the Weekly Set Podcast with Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Episode 219, recorded August 24th, 2019. Hello everybody and welcome to the Weekly Set, the official podcast of the Total Screen. I am your host, my name is Tyson, and joining me today, as always, is my partner in crime here at the Total Screen, William Rohrig.
Hello.
So today we are going to be talking about Season 3 of Glow, and that's it. So let's get started. Let's talk about Season 3 of Glow.
Let's do it. How do you feel about Season 3 of Glow?
It's interesting because I went in with seeing a lot of negative impressions from people that were upset that there wasn't enough wrestling. Like, Season 2 kind of put a lot more focus on the wrestling.
It did.
But then if you think back, Season 1 didn't have that much focus on the wrestling, you know?
Well, Season 1 was kind of like they were just getting started. And
yeah.
I guess the expectation was okay, since they had Season 1 was all about establishing it, then Season 2 was kind of about making it a thing. And so there was this expectation now that they're in Vegas, they've established it, they've kind of made it, so we get more wrestling. And it's not the direction that they went.
No, what they went is more of they're in Vegas now, so now we see it from the angle of them putting on a Vegas show.
Right.
So it's more of the Broadway direction than it is, or not Broadway, but more of the big show direction than it is the wrestling.
Right.
Right. You still see some wrestling. There's still quite a bit of wrestling in it, actually.
There's some in there, exactly. One of the most memorable things about is when they do a Christmas Carol. That's pretty funny.
They do a big wrestling show Christmas Carol thing.
Yeah. But it is more focused on people's personal lives, and it's interesting too with this season because it's more disjointed because it's kind of following these disparate storylines that aren't really connected to each other, other than these people work together and know each other. But they have their own drama going on that's not really connected to anything else.
A lot of it's actually kind of set up from Season 2. Season 2 kind of set this stuff up. And now we're in Season 3, we're getting these separate things. So we have what is it, where am I missing it? The second junk chain, not Cherry, but the second one.
Yes.
Yolanda and Arthi, Beirut the Mad Balmer, having this kind of lesbian relationship is this whole storyline in this season. But they got together in the last season. It was just kind of more of a quiet, between the scenes kind of thing.
It was more in the background, right? It was more not so much Yolanda. It was last season we had the realization that Yolanda is a lesbian and that she gets into this relationship, but it wasn't really explored in the previous season. It was just this is a thing, okay.
Yeah, and then in this season we're kind of getting more of that story.
Yeah, we're getting more of that story. This season, we get more into Bash's story, and we finally get confirmation on something we've suspected. It was kind of salacious the way that they revealed it, but it was confirmation on something that we kind of knew since Season 2.
Are you talking about Bash being gay, or?
Yes.
Yeah, we got that in Season 2. We had a big moment that kind of almost felt like it came out of nowhere. His butler person, whatever, that he had this relationship with, it was kind of just implied.
It was implied.
Just kind of went missing.
He went missing.
And then he was looking for him, and then you had this whole discovery of where he is and stuff, but it was kind of this weird background element, and then it turned into this kind of dark story about AIDS and...
Yeah, he died from HIV, right? That was how he
complications
died.
of HIV,
yeah. Complications of HIV. And had always been this implication that they were in a more than friends relationship, but even at the end of that storyline, there was nothing was confirmed. It was implied the whole time.
Yes.
It wasn't really confirmed one way or another.
He did take an AIDS test, though, like an HIV test.
Yes, he did take an HIV test. But this season, like, we had his big coming out moment. It's
kind of.
Yeah, kinda. I don't know. It's more than kinda.
Because the season ended with him basically like saying, "Yes, that's right, Britannica. I don't want to have any secrets between us. Let's have a family."
Well, yeah, it ended with him like in denial.
Yeah.
So I don't know like how good that was, but like
I think that was kind of probably the biggest theme of this season as a whole was like homophobia.
Yeah, it was a theme. Yeah, definitely, because they introduced this,
like it ran through it because we had mentioned the kind of lesbian relationship between Beirut and Junk Chain. But in addition to that, you also had this new character that was like a drag performer.
The person I just mentioned.
So you had him kind of outside of Bash, like because you have his interactions with Bash, but then you also just have him in general, like tying in with other characters and stuff. And he does like, we're at the same hotel that they're doing this, their show at. He does like this drag show at. And, so you have all the kind of stuff about him and the drag stuff and that kind of comes to a head this season where he does this big, like, what is it? Like it wasn't New Year's. Was it New Year's? I can't remember. He did like a big, like, special.
It wasn't New Year's because
the Christmas one came after, right? So it couldn't have been New Year's.
It could have been New Year. It was like an annual thing. I don't think it was tied to a holiday. It was just like this annual ball that he throws every year. I don't think it's tied to a specific holiday.
Okay, but anyways, they did like this ball that he threw, and because of the different positions of the characters, you have, Liberty Bell is like, well, let's make it like really big and grand, and I'll advertise, and you'll see how huge it can get. And as a result of that, it kind of ends in like a hate crime with some graffitiing and a fire being set at the place, and that kind of brings all the homophobia stories together to a head because it's not just that part of the story and Bash being kind of like, the issues with him and Britannica and everything else going on there.
Well, Bash isn't even there.
No, but like Britannica was.
Yeah, Britannica was, and Yolanda and
Yolanda and Arthi were both there as well. And had like this kind of moment where, right before that scene happened, they had the moment where they had like basically kind of broken up because Arthi wasn't coming out fully as gay. She didn't want to attach a label to herself. And Yolanda was upset about that.
Well, she was acting weird, right? Because she wouldn't let Yolanda go down on her, and she was like being kind of like sketchy. And so when Yolanda and then, like, when they do the camping in the mountains, like, some of the other girls, like, they say, like, the stuff that pisses Yolanda off, because it's like, they say, like, they make, like, these really insensitive, like, jokes.
The Rosenblatt characters, Edna and Ethel, those characters that play the old lady rustlers or whatever, they were kind of making some kind of, like, little kind of jokes or making, like, little, like, homophobic kind of remarks. Or like expressing discomfort in certain areas.
So Yolanda gets pissed. Arthi goes off with her, and Yolanda's trying to like explain to Arthi. It's like, no, if you're gay, you shouldn't you shouldn't take that. You should be offended. And then that's when Arthi is like kind of like, oh, I don't know if I'm gay, and that really pisses Yolanda off. To the point where they're basically separated for almost the rest of the season because of that, until Arthi finally decides to fully accept her sexuality.
Yeah. So that was like a struggle with them with that storyline, and that it kind of came to a head also before she accepted it. I think the last straw that kind of made her then decide to accept it right afterwards was the hate crime, the fire, and seeing kind of like Yolanda's reaction to it and the way, she was kind of differentiating between this happening as like, oh, something crazy happened to us versus like something happened that was aimed at us, that was targeted at us because of sexuality.
Right, exactly.
Yolanda like drew that distinction, and Arthi began to see it at that point, and that led to them kind of making up for that. But it was also like a big moment for, just in general of like the characters addressing homophobia.
Right.
So besides that, we had a storyline going on, kind of carrying over from last season again, of this kind of a love triangle between Ruth, her boyfriend, Russell, and Sam.
Yes.
Who likes her, and Ruth is obviously confused. We know what page Sam's on, we know what page Russell's on, and Ruth is just kind of confused between those two places.
Ruth is kind of confused. It's funny because in the aforementioned episode where they're camping in the mountains, Ruth and Debbie go off and they end up getting lost. And they end up spending all day being lost in the mountains. And finally, they stop and you know, Debbie's going on like, you know, Debbie's like going on, you know, like, if I die, you know, like, they're gonna find me, and like the headlines are gonna write, you know, like former soap opera star found dead in the mountains outside Las Vegas, and you know, and she's like nervous, and then that's when Ruth decides to like basically spill her guts, you know, and open up, and then that's when she like comes to the realization that she's in love with Sam. Like before that, she's kind of been like, you know, like denying it.
Yeah, she was kind of denying it, and it was kind of like a under the surface storyline for like maybe the first half of the season. And with her trying to kind of make a long distance relationship work with Russell and everything going on with that. And then she kind of decided she was going to, you know, confess to Sam when she got back from that trip. But when she got back, Sam wasn't there.
Right.
So she immediately like jumps to the conclusion like, oh, he left. I guess this wasn't meant to be kind of thing. Like, she still likes him, but she's in that position now, because that's just Ruth, how she is. But Sam left for a completely different storyline reason, which is that he, you know, having reconnected with his daughter, she ended up writing a script that ended up being really good based on kind of her experiences finding her father. And Sam liked it and wanted to kind of shop it around to get it made into a movie and help her out and get that through. And so they had taken off to kind of Hollywood to do that, because that's kind of like how Sam is. He's just like, yeah, whatever, I'm just going to take off and do this, you know? And then Ruth is how Ruth is. So she's like, oh, he left. What does that mean?
Yeah. He left. What does that mean? Because Sam had come out to Ruth that he's in love with her, and then Ruth like shot him down, you know, made everything off. And so that was right before she went off into the mountains. And during that time also, you know, like Bash they get the offer from the hotel manager, who is played by Gina Davis, another new character introduced this season. She was a former showgirl at one of the shows in the casino hotel, and now she's running the place.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically comes to them with an offer. Like, they're only supposed to be there for, like, I think a 6-month engagement. You know, that's the deal. So they're only there for, like, a limited amount of time. And you have several of the characters are looking forward to ending the run and just getting back home. You know, like...
Well, there's different things, like Welfare Queen.
Yeah.
She wants to get through it because she's suffering a lot of pain. She's having trouble. She needs to go to the doctor, but she's not doing it because she's trying to get through the show. But she's, like, counting down the days. Like, okay, I'm almost through. I'm almost done. Then I can go back home and go to a doctor.
Yes. Yes.
And then you have other people, like, making other plans and trying to figure things out.
So Tame, her back is killing her, and instead of, like, seeing a doctor, she doesn't want to be kicked off the show, so she's just, like, suffering through it to, like, her extreme detriment. And, you know, Debbie is, you know, her baby boy is at home, and she's she misses being there for her kid, you know, especially, like, you know, she has her ex taking care of her kid for her, and he's doing things like taking his first steps and stuff while she's not there to see it. And
Sam kind of feels like he's unnecessary.
Yeah, Sam
because he's like a director that's like, this is a live show. This isn't. Yeah, there's nothing being filmed. You know, there's nothing being put together.
There's nothing to direct. Right.
Yeah.
And so they get this offer, and it's not like everybody just says yes, because, like I said, these characters have these things happening, but Bash jumps on it. Bash is like, yes. And then when people come to Bash with their objections for why, they don't want this, Bash is just like, well, F you, we're taking this deal, and this is
if you don't like it, you can walk.
You don't like it, you can walk. This is my show. My name is on it,
Yeah.
And,
much to kind of everyone's shock, including Gina Davis's character.
Yes, including
Sandy, who's kind of just like, oh, whoa, what's going on here,
Whoa, what's going on? So they're kind of stuck there. Sam just walks, that's what he does, because
he just doesn't care. He's not emotionally invested in it. He's emotionally invested in some of the people. He's emotionally invested in Ruth for sure, but he's not emotionally invested in this going on or not. He can walk away or whatever. He doesn't care.
Yeah, he walks away. Like initially Bash comes to Sam, shows him the offer of the money, and expects Sam to take his side. But Sam doesn't take his side. He basically calls him an asshole and then he just takes off.
Yeah. So all this is going on. This leads, like we said, all this happens right before they go on that camping trip, where a lot of characters come to different kind of realizations. Sam is out in Hollywood right after that, trying to get his daughter's film made, and he has a heart attack.
Yeah, he has a heart attack in the middle of the successful pitch meeting.
Yeah, he has a bad pitch meeting, and then he has a successful one, and during the successful one, he's has a heart attack.
It's funny because during the bad pitch meeting, he has 3 right here. The first one, it's they love it, but they want to replace the female lead with a male lead, and they want to cast Michael J. Fox and everything, and and
so that was the compromise pitch.
And Justine's ready to just accept that, but he's basically no, fuck them. Don't take that. Don't let them boss you around.
He's I know the guy at this next pitch. He'll give us a good deal.
Yeah,
and that's the bad pitch. Because that guy fucking hates him.
Yeah, that guy hates his guts. That's the bad pitch. So they finally get a good pitch, and that's during that meeting he has a heart attack, and he kind of he hides it from Justine though. He makes her go off without him. She wants to celebrate because she just sold her movie, and he's yeah, go celebrate just without me, and then
he kind of slumps down on the sidewalk and asks a stranger to call an ambulance for him.
Yeah, he goes to the hospital, and then he comes back for a hospital, and and she's basically where the fuck have you been, and he doesn't want to tell her.
We should note that he doesn't tell anybody.
Yeah,
by the end of season 3, he's the only character that knows he had a heart attack.
Right. Even though
nobody else knows. Ruth
weird.
Doesn't know. Yeah.
It's weird though, because at the end of season 3, he presents Justine with adoption papers, for her to sign, and he basically explains, it's so that he basically explains to her it's so that she can inherit, what he has, his assets, after he dies. And then he says, which might be sooner than either of us thinks, which is kind of that's where his head is at. And it was odd to me that.
It's cryptic, but it's not I think she just, she had no reason to assume that there was more to it.
Yeah, I guess so, because she doesn't blink at it.
It's kind of a cryptic comment to the audience.
She doesn't, but I feel God, she should have, because he's presenting her with these adoption papers for her to sign, telling her that it's so she can inherit his stuff, and then he drops in that cryptic line, and
she probably just thinks he's being fatalistic. See, the thing is we have more information than she does.
That's true.
So Ruth finally does confess to Sam after Sam calls her
to audition
for this movie he's making with his daughter, which gets her really excited because she's in a funk.
Yes.
About what's going on with this. We should also say that by this point, Sheila has kind of broken character and finally decided to really pursue acting. And she had tried to pursue acting earlier in the season, but it just wasn't going well because she refused to abandon her wolf character that she's had since the very beginning. That's a part of her. And there had been a wrestling match where basically Welfare Queen, feeling so injured, hatched a plot to basically hey, let's trade characters.
Right.
And just do whatever.
And just do it.
And so that she could could take over the Rosenblatt character so she could use a walker and support herself
so
up.
she could support herself up. Debbie goes along with it because Debbie has an ulterior motive where...
Well, Debbie thinks that, like, this is the end of our run. Let's have fun.
No, because this is after Bash comes to them and announces that they've extended it. So Bash is like, well,
this is before he did that whole power play, though.
No, this is like around that time, if I remember correctly, because that's
it was before they went on their camping trip, and the scene where he went off and was like, fuck you all, you can leave or whatever, was the last scene of the episode before they went on the camping trip.
That's true, yeah, it was.
So this was before that.
But
so this is when he was floating the idea of doing the thing, but hadn't yet decided, everybody else were doing
That's
it.
true, he didn't have that scene, but Debbie at this point already knew of what was going on with that. She knew of that plan. So she knew that was happening. Okay, so yeah, he didn't...
Well, she didn't know it was happening. She knew that it was in negotiations to happen.
So she knew it was in negotiations to happen. She knew Bash was going to take the deal, or Bash wanted to take the deal. I remember because there's a scene where Bash tells her that he wants to take the deal, and she argues with him, and he pushes back at her and basically like makes it clear that he's not going to take her opinion into consideration.
At this point she still thinks it's an argument, though. He hasn't gone over her head yet.
Yeah, that's true. You're right. So yeah, at this point, but so she's thinking this is an opportunity for her to kind of like put on a bad show and like make the head of the hotel casino, Gina Davis, like reconsider everything. So she's hoping like if everybody switches characters, they'll look bad and it will make her reconsider the offer, and then they can go home when they're scheduled to. So she's kind of, in a way, like her mindset is like, oh yeah, this is my opportunity to sabotage this a little bit. But it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, kind of, some of the people end up thriving in that position. It brings up some issues with some. There's a racism issue that comes up when Melrose takes over Fortune Cookies.
Yeah, because she goes like really overboard with the stereotypes. Like, it's already because... And let me look up her real name. So I don't...
Melrose?
Not Melrose. Fortune Cookie. Like...
Jenny Che?
Yeah, Jenny Che. Yeah, Jenny, like, it's already a sore point for Jenny doing that character in the first place. Because it's already, like, insensitive, a stereotype. And then, like, Melrose gets into that character and she, like, dials it up to 11,
Yeah.
And
she's white,
and she's like, in her position is like, it's bad enough when she's the one doing that stuff because she's Asian, but when now it's a white girl like in that outfit like doing that, like that's infinitely worse.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so that's one of the things that kind of comes to a head with this reverse role show. There's also some of the homophobia comes up again because there's the issue of the Rosenblatts not wanting to, have one of them switch places because they don't want to wrestle in the way that Beirut and Junk Chain wrestle together, because they think that is like, oh, well, you're going to be like rubbing against each other and, that wouldn't be right, because I'm straight. Even though they do it with somebody else, but it's because the other girl's a lesbian. Like, see, they don't think it's right. And that's kind of starts. I mean, we mentioned that, Junk Chain took issue with some of the stuff they were saying on the camping trip, but it kind of started here.
And and the camping trip, like, one of the big things is because the disconnect between Melanie and Jenny, and basically Melanie is like, kind of like, what the heck is your problem? And then when Jenny finally comes out with it, Melanie spends basically the rest of the episode trying to get back on Jenny's good side until like the end of the episode where Melanie like opens up about her background and her family, and she gets Jenny to open up about herself, and they come to like a deeper understanding.
Well, Melanie's Jewish, so she talks about her family that died in the Holocaust.
Yes.
And Jenny reveals that her family, including her, like, so she's first generation, well, not first generation, she's not first generation. So she herself came from Cambodia with her parents, and they escaped the killing fields.
Yeah, they escaped the killing fields. Yeah.
And everybody that they know that didn't escape with them died.
Right.
So that becomes like, like a moment of understanding between them at that point. We also have, during the camping trip, Wolf Girl. I have so many names on our show notes here. I'm trying to scan through. Sheila has like this wolf vision and then like passes out.
Well, we shouldn't start there with Sheila. That's basically like almost.
Well, we already talked about her wanting to be an actress, and
well, it's more than that because it's like she starts questioning her identity, right? Because she has that awful audition where like the guy writing the audition is like, you know, like, you can't just be that, you know, pointing to herself.
What was it? It was an audition. It was an acting class.
Yeah, it was an acting class. You're right. It was the acting class, and he's like, you can't just be that. And like, she starts having an identity because that's her entire identity. That he was basically telling her not to be herself, you know. And in a way, that's what acting is. You got to become something different. And she comes to realize this, and through this realization, she also gets help from the new drag queen character that they introduced.
Yes, Bobby.
She becomes closer with Bobby, and she starts questioning her identity, what it means to her. And after she has the wolf vision that you talk about, she casts off her wolf identity and becomes like basically a new person.
Yeah, she burns her old clothes and her wig. She kind of throws that aside.
So that's her journey this season.
Yeah. It was one of the more interesting stories, I think, because that was like this weird character trait that she's had since the very first season. Her very first appearance, you know?
I wasn't expecting like this to happen.
Yeah. So that was kind of a core one of the storylines. We had a much kind of a diminished role for Cherry in this season. She had kind of a big, you know, a big issue in her storyline, which is that she and her husband were trying to make a baby, and she kind of reached a certain point where she started to question if she wanted to put her body through that, if she wanted her body to go through the changes that are necessary through pregnancy, and what that was going to do to her body, and she didn't want to do it anymore, and she started getting really kind of paranoid about that. And so she and her husband kind of had like this split moment where he kind of walked off and went back to Los Angeles because he was really angry because they had been working on this and now she's saying she doesn't want kids because of this. And it's something it wasn't resolved until like the very end of the season. But basically that just diminished her role into like, oh, Cherry's sad. That was like her role for the rest of the season.
Yeah, because her and her boyfriend had that disagreement about where he wants to have kids, but she wants to have her career, and she doesn't want to ruin her body, and you know, and yeah, but they do get back together at the end of the season, like in the last episode.
But it was just kind of like it was a much diminished role for her. It was kind of weird in a way.
It was kind of weird, right? Yeah, because like it was like, oh, okay, so she's sad, and that's it. It's weird because like it felt like a lot of these storylines didn't really go anywhere. Like the whole Teme and her back thing is like solved fairly quickly when Carmen just comes up with like, you know, she could be a manager.
Yeah, it's in general that was kind of her character also kind of had to diminish because in season 2 she had that excellent storyline involving her son.
Yes,
where she went with her son to a college tour and she was recognized and like she faced similar issues to what, you know, I guess Jenny was facing in this season. The idea of like portraying racist, you know, not ideals, like racist tropes in her career and what that means, you know, and like for her it was being welfare queen and having people see her as this welfare queen and stuff, somebody that leeches off the system, and how her son had to deal with that as well, like after like coming to terms with that. And it was all like done like a self-contained kind of episode last season. And in this season, the follow-up to that was this backstory, which wasn't as strong, wasn't as interesting, and was spread out over the whole season. So it's kind of weird. Like it was a very diminished role. Like, so I understand what they're doing because they needed to shift focus to certain characters.
Right.
They wanted more of a focus on Arthur and Yolanda's relationship. They wanted more of a focus on Sheila and her storyline.
They want more of a focus, like on Ruth and
I heard the love triangle with Ruth and
they want
Sam.
more of a focus on Sam, and they want more of a focus on
Bash and Britannica
and Debbie and her struggles. Like first half of the season is like her just struggling to be with her kid, and then she meets this guy who's like this major like television mogul.
Tex.
Yes.
Which is funny because it's her mistakenly thinking he's from Texas.
Yeah,
which he isn't.
Which he isn't. Well, actually, I'd say it's
and like, clearly you're a guy that has the nickname Tex. And he's like, no, I don't have the nickname Tex. But you're from Texas. No, I'm not from Texas.
It seems to be going fine. She seems to be happy with it, but then he reveals himself to be the typical misogynistic asshole, and she sees an opportunity to kind of screw him over to further her own goals.
I'm not recalling him having the misogynist issue.
Oh, it's the last episode.
I know they had the dinner where he went with her and some people that he was with were misogynists.
It's not the dinner. It's the last episode where Debbie mentions to him, you know, where he's complaining about this deal he's trying to make. Where, like, he's trying to get, like, this TV station for, like, cheap, and the seller won't sell. And Debbie comes on and basically says, well, I looked at the books, and you are way, like, underbidding for this station for what it's worth. And then he's basically like, oh, well, why are you looking at my books? You know, you don't need to be doing that. And she's like, well, we're partners. I want us to be partners, so you know, I want to be able to help you out. And he's like, well, you are helping me out at those dinners. You know, and she's like how? By being pretty? And he's like, exactly. You know, so
okay.
Yeah.
I must have, like, been checking my phone during that scene.
Okay, you must have, yeah, because that was the big thing, and that's when Debbie decides that she's gonna take that deal away from him and screw him over to further her own goals.
See, yeah, that makes more sense, because it felt kind of weird before, like she had just taken the deal in order to further her dreams and then completely sacrificed her relationship for only that, you know, like really screwing over him for just that reason. That's kind of how I had read it before because I had missed that scene somehow.
Right.
But yeah, I guess that makes more sense now. I was actually going to bring that up as something that kind of felt weird. But now I know the motivation behind it, so now it doesn't feel as weird. But it does feel weird that everybody was addressing it like in the way that I had thought, which was like, isn't this going to kill your relationship? And she was like, yeah, like she was making some huge sacrifice. And it's like, well, in that position, I guess it really wasn't a huge sacrifice.
No, it wasn't a huge sacrifice. No. She wanted to kill that because at that point, like, the relationship was done. She wasn't gonna, like, sit there and settle for that.
Yeah.
So she saw an opportunity to where she could get Bash to buy this TV station and they can have total control over Glow and Glow's destiny. In her opinion, she was going to be like the CEO, Bash was going to be the owner, and she was going to like run the entire operation.
Ruth was basically going to be doing what Sam did.
Yeah, she wanted Ruth to be the director. Ruth turns her down. Well, it's funny because it's a classic thing where like they're going home for Christmas, and Ruth is actually going back to Nebraska to be with her family for Christmas, and she's trying to get aboard the plane, and Debbie has to chase her down, and she's like offering her. Well, she's more than offering her this position. Debbie is like insisting because
she's like, kind of like backhand insulting her too, because she's
is.
Oh, you need to give up on your acting dream because that's never going to happen. And
yeah. She's like, yeah, you need to give up. You're never going to be an actor. Yeah, she's backhand insulting her at the same time. Like she's being kind of like, because she's basically presenting it as like, oh, I'm presenting you with the opportunity of a lifetime, and you're kind of an idiot if you turn it down because you're not going to amount to nothing if you don't take this. You know, that's not exact words of what she says, but that's like the underlying message, underlying of what she's saying.
Yeah, I mean, she said the same thing. It's kind of a continuation of a scene between the two of them and Carmen, with Carmen telling them like, hey, don't try to sweeten the pot or tell me, there's going to be other opportunities. I want to wrestle. I'm going with my brother and I'm going to join him and actually wrestle. That's what I want to do. And Debbie saw that as like stupid, where Ruth saw it as like brave.
Yeah, Ruth saw it as brave.
And so that kind of informs their interaction later on when Debbie's like, well, so you're going to be stupid like Carmen? And Ruth's like, no, this is your dream, not mine,
Right, exactly. Like Ruth has like different plans for her future. She doesn't want to do that. Even though like Debbie thinks it's an amazing opportunity and it'd be great, that's what Debbie thinks.
Yeah.
And that's what Ruth is trying to make clear. Like Debbie's like ideas of what she wants in life are different from what Ruth wants. You know, it's just because what Debbie wants doesn't mean that's what everybody else wants.
Yeah. Debbie continues to be kind of like the secret villain of the series, I think.
Yeah, the secret villain of the series. She's just like, you know, she's just she's an ambitious...
She's a lot.
she's an ambitious person, you know, and I think she can't understand the concept that other people aren't as ambitious as she is.
Or aren't of the same ambition.
Right, or aren't of the same ambition.
Like, she thinks, you know, like, hey, this is what we've been working towards, you know, so that I can become more important and stuff. And they're like, well, that's not why I was doing it.
Right.
It's like, what do you mean that's not why you were doing it? I'm the most important person in the world, you know? Kind of lacks a little empathy, but yeah, so that's trying to think if there's anything else we really need to cover.
Is there anything else we haven't touched on?
Well, I guess we should say that the season started with a bang.
It did, yeah. It started with the Challenger explosion.
Yeah, which is, I don't know about you, but I have like kind of weird memories of that when that actually happened.
I don't have any memories of that.
Unfortunately. It's like sketchy clear. Like I have like aspects of my memories are super clear and aspects of them aren't. I just know I was like in school. Like I watched it at school.
God, You
must have just been, you know, just like a year too young. Because my memories were like half formed. What? I think I'm like a year too older than you.
You are. What year was that in again?
86, I think.
86, I would have been 5 years old. Like,
okay.
I guess I would have been like in kindergarten. I don't know if they'd show that kindergartners. So,
well, they wouldn't show the explosion, just the launch.
I don't think they bothered to even show that. Like,
I was, I think, in first or second grade, and
okay.
So I remember
because I did do a second year in kindergarten as well. So
yeah, I remember watching it in a classroom and then it happening and being like shocked and not really understanding
right
what was going on. And so I remember, like, that's what I remember very clearly about that moment. So it was kind of like, oh, you know, you always see moments that are from the past being depicted in like shows or movies that are like really iconic that like usually aren't a part of my life or aren't things that were like really integral to my life growing up, like the Kennedy assassination or something. And you have like, whenever it happens, you get all the baby boomers are like, oh, I remember exactly where I was when that happened. And so, you know, like they have that kind of reaction to it. And this is like one of like the first times like I've watched something and gone like, oh, okay, yeah, now I know exactly how those baby boomers feel when they talk about the Kennedy thing. Cause I remember exactly, like I have a vision in my head of my view from like my desk looking at a TV on one of those little portable stands that they bring into a classroom and watching that explosion.
That must have been horrifying to see that live.
It is, you know, it's more, I think, more confusing than anything because you don't really understand it that much at that age.
You don't really get it. Like,
it's like confusion and sadness and kind of like shock. And so, yeah, so that, it was kind of interesting watching it with that perspective. Like, you know, I think when, you know, another 10 years passes and they start doing nostalgia things about the early 2000s and they cover you know, 9/11, you know, there's going to be a lot of kids that are going like, oh, I remember exactly where I was when that happened. And
that I can obviously remember.
Yeah, that was a little bit, you know, you're in your adult years. When you're in your formative years, your memories are a little loose.
I was sleeping in super hardcore, and then my mom woke me up and said something was happening on the news. And
it was the same with me. I was sleeping and my sister woke me up and was saying that we were like under attack or something. And
yeah, she said something. My mom said something like that, and then I walked out, and I was still groggy, and I was just staring at the TV, and I was like kind of in disbelief. It kind of it kind of felt, it was like this kind of surreal feeling, like I didn't actually wake up, like, felt like I was still dreaming, and I was just dreaming that shit. And it was like, but it was real. It was terrifying.
Back to the show though, which is, I actually kind of had a 9/11 feeling during the show at one point. I was watching the show with my mom, watching Glow, and there's a scene where she was chasing her through the airport and stuff, and this ties back to 9/11. I'm like, well, that can't happen anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, right, exactly.
You can't like run through the gate, like that.
They'll tackle the shit out of you.
There's like all sorts of like, when, they say the gate, but there's like literal gates blocking you off.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah, now.
Yeah, that's not, it's funny, it's always funny when you watch like air travel in an era before 9/11 now,
Yeah, now, yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, yeah, that's not at all what air travel's like anymore.
Yeah. It's so weird how the world changed, since then.
But that brings us back to Glow, so I'm trying to think if there was anything kind of else we really want to talk about.
I don't know, we touched on the whole things. We pretty much touched on everything, even if we didn't go into, like, super detail about some things.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, maybe we didn't touch enough on the Bash stuff.
Yeah, so I guess we can go deeper into, like, the Bash stuff, so, like, and especially the stuff with Britannica, basically her side of it, which she spends the entire season frustrated that Bash
she's ignorant about him being gay.
She
doesn't see it at all.
She doesn't know this, but she spends the entire season frustrated that he's not being more intimate with her. And she's trying to seduce him and make him more interested. And then finally she comes up, there's this whole thing with Melrose, where Melrose is...
She's sleeping with a gigolo.
Yeah, she's sleeping with a gigolo. At first she doesn't know he's a gigolo, but then he reveals, well,
she thought that he thought she was a prostitute.
Right. And then she finds out the opposite. And apparently, like, after that encounter, she becomes okay with it, because she just keeps seeing him. And basically, like, Britannica, like, she asks Melrose if she could borrow him, to, like, because there's a scene earlier where, like, this guy is flirting with her, and Bash comes in and he gets, like, really pissed off. He yells at him, this guy, tells him to go off, and then, like, he kisses her, and so she gets it in her head, like, if she makes
she completely misread it.
She completely misread it. Yeah, exactly. She gets it in her head. Like,
she read it as jealousy.
She gets this idea in her head. Oh, if she makes him jealous, then he'll want to sleep with her. She
read it as jealousy in general, and it was never jealousy. It was like he was protecting his image or something.
He was it was insecurity, because this whole time, like, we see his insecurity and projection, like, because at one point, like, Bobby, the drag queen lounge singer, he's trying to get Bash to fund his show at Britannica's, like, suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
She has Bash go and see it, and he watches it. And Bash, this is a guy who's, like, gets super enthusiastic about anything. Like, there's like, these magicians. Yeah, there's this magician waiter that he hires on the spot after being, like, wowed by his, like, stupid magic tricks.
He's such, like, a little kid in that way.
Yeah, he's such a little kid
He just gets so easily impressed. And then that kind of reputation spreads around, so everybody's trying to impress him. And you just see all these shots, like, he'll be in an elevator and somebody will come on and do some, like, juggling, and he's just like, wow!
And he's just like, wow. But then he watches this, and then he gets up, like, visibly upset, and he just says, no, this is not a Bash Howard production. And that's because of his own insecurity about himself, like...
Well, before the scene before they even did the play thing, where the two of them were talking.
Yes.
And he had said, Bobby had made a comment about, like, well, Bash said, like, oh, I gotta, do something with my wife. And then Bobby's like, oh yeah, I have a wife too. Like, hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Like,
yeah.
Like, Bobby's gaydar is working, and he can see Bash for what he is.
He can see Bash for what he is, and Bash is just like, it makes Bash uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so then when it comes chance for him to do the audition, that's, like, in his lens the whole time. It's not just the performance itself, it's that
right.
He was found out.
Yeah, he was found out.
And he's not happy. And so this is like the start of asshole Bash.
His whole deal is he's afraid of his sexuality getting out and ruining his life, like having his inheritance taken from him, having everything taken from him and ruining his life. That's what he's truly terrified of.
Yeah.
And it comes to a head when Britannica tries to make him jealous with this guy, and then they end up in a threesome, and Bash starts getting really hands-on with this guy, right? And so,
yeah.
And then after that encounter, he's really freaking out. Like, he's like, he's like, you gotta fire this guy. He's bad. And you go into hotel owner, you gotta fire this guy. And she's like, the gigolo? Well, he doesn't work for me, so I don't know if I can fire him. And he's just like, he has like a nervous breakdown. Debbie finds him, and she ends up having to console him, and he ends up pouring like all his frustration and his insecurity and his fears off Debbie, really laying it out there. He just has this breakdown, and he finally comes out with everything to Debbie.
Yeah, he has that, but then upon, having a moment where, Britannica comes to him and tries to clear the air and tells him that this guy was a gigolo and that she had hired him to make him jealous to try to so they could have sex and so that they could fix the relationship. And she's like, I can't be somebody who lives a lie and who's part of this lie. We need to be honest with each other. And she gives Bash that opportunity to be honest with her, and instead he goes the opposite direction.
He regresses. He goes backwards. He kind of sweeps all that back under the rug, and
he's like, I just want to get out of this town, and then we can spend more time with you, and we can start a family.
Yeah, it's like, it's this town making me this way. And it's like, no, he's gonna, which I predict is gonna end in disaster.
Yeah, well, I mean, even like there's a part of Britannica that realizes that this is wrong.
Right, exactly.
Like, you can see it when they're kind of hugging after he says that, like, where she just kind of, there's a little tiny piece of her that realizes something's really off. And that's, what the thing is, that kind of stuff happens where, somebody wants to hide an aspect of their life. And so they just try to commit to the role of being this straight person that they've pretended to be before. That's what he's doing. And the further you take that, the more disastrous it gets. So that's going to be a plot in season 4, I'm sure, if there is a season 4.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to be a major plot in season 4, I believe, because it seemed like he was at the point to accept himself or something, and then he totally regresses on that.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it then. That was kind of the one thing we didn't touch as much on as we had wanted to.
Right, exactly. We needed to fully touch on that.
So that's it for Glow Season 3. Next week we're going to be talking about The Boys on Amazon Prime Video. We're going to be talking about Season 1 of The Boys. But until then, here's what's coming up in the near future, the time ahead. I keep experimenting with the format of what date I start talking about what shows are coming out and what day I stop. I keep adjusting it because it never lines up right with when the podcast comes out. So I'm just kind of still experimenting with how far I go. So I'm going all the way to September 6th now, starting on August 23rd, which has already passed. But so on Friday, August 23rd, 2019, 13 Reasons Why returned to Netflix and Hero Mask came to Netflix. That's an anime series. On Sunday, August 25th, 2019, The Affair is coming to Showtime. On Becoming a God in Central Florida is also coming to Showtime. That's the new Kirsten Dunst series.
Okay.
And I think it was originally supposed to be on YouTube Premium or something, and ended up becoming a Showtime show, which is interesting because you usually don't hear about YouTube Premium shows on anything outside of YouTube Premium. But Ballers is also returning to HBO for its final season, I believe. And then Power is returning to Stars. And on Thursday, August 29th, Working Moms is coming back to Netflix. On Friday, August 30th, The Dark Crystal, Age of Resistance, The A-List, Back to School, Carol and Tuesday, The Good Bandit, all coming to Netflix, and Carnival Row coming to Amazon Prime Video. That's also the day that Astral Chain comes out on the Switch. So there's a little bit of a Legion tie-in there.
Nice.
If you listen to our past podcast. And then on Tuesday, September 3rd, Greenleaf comes to OWN, Mayans MC returns to FX, On Wednesday, September 4th, Wu-Tang: An American Saga comes to Netflix. On Friday, September 6th, Elite returns to Netflix. The Spy, which is a miniseries starring Sacha Baron Cohen, comes to Netflix. And Titans returns for its second season on DC Universe. So that's it. Thank you everybody for listening. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can follow Will. He is at Voxel Hero. You can check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, as well as our site, thetotalscreen.com. You can subscribe to the podcast through any major podcast client like iTunes or Pocket Cast. And the entire backlog of our podcast is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like to reach out to us and make a comment, send an email to contact@thetotalscreen.com. Stay tuned to The Total Screen for the very best